Hello there, welcome back. I'm going to talk about Velvet Goldmine today. Velvet Goldmine was a film from Todd Haynes from, I think it was 1998. I saw it in the cinema when it was released. You know, it wasn't on long. It got a lot of hype and then came out and no one was interested. It was just that film that they tried to hit with the next big thing. Look at these big stars in this indie film. And it came out and it was just released at a time when no one was quite interested in that subject. And then it hit video and DVD and all the rest, and that's where it found its life, because it's a film that is easily rewatchable. There's lots of scenes in it, a lot of sequences within it you can watch independent of the rest of the film, because it's a lot of well-directed sequences, because it's a film about a fantasy way of looking at the world, in the sense of people are creating their own version of themselves, and the film is almost a product or version of history done in the style of a fiction. So it's taken the glam rock of the 70s and fictionalised it to a degree, so you get a lot of characters who are versions of people you know in real life. So the lead character is a kind of version of David Bowie, even though Bowie wasn't a big fan of this film. But it was about him, so what do you expect? And it wasn't really trying to be him at the same time. It was kind of about the myth of Bowie more than Bowie. It wasn't about the man, it was about the myth and the sense of taking that kind of career then create a character out of it that wasn't quite Bowie. So obviously, it'd probably strike him as not being quite him. You've got another character who's played by Hugh McGregor, who's a bit Iggy Pop, a bit Lou Reed. You've got all these managers and all these other characters who are based on certain types. Like Tony Collette is a character based on David Bowie's wife. And it's the structure of Citizen Kane where a reporter tries to find out what happened to this rock star Brian Slade, who disappeared 10 years ago, who was a big rock star and then disappeared off the face of the earth after faking his own assassination on stage. And it's what happened to him. Like, he just disappeared instantly. And now the thing is, you can tell this is taking the kind of artistic version of events, because in real life, if someone faked their own assassination and they came back a few days later, they'd be bigger than ever. You'd never live it down. But this is actually a version of it. It's like, this is a kind of fantasy logic of a dream. It's not reality. And when you watch, the thing is, when you watch, especially because I watched the projector, I mentioned I was going to annoy Chris Mohan. It's the thing I remember seeing from the film as the sense of, this is like a dream. It's not, the emotions are there, but it is very much taking cinema as a dreamlike thing. And it's a mix of the dreamlike with the rough and ready nature of humanity and the physicality of humanity, like the kind of the rub of both sides of humanity, what it dreams of and what it is, and how it kind of frustrates human beings. And that's kind of the nature of the film. It's about that kind of weird disjointedness based on characters who are experiencing that and can articulate artistic versions of it, which is the film, but can't really articulate it in life in the right way and get messed up in life about it. And there's a sense of the fictions you create to keep yourself sane, and the various versions of who you are, and there's different versions of you, and a lot of them are fiction because they're based on you trying to protect yourself, or you trying to fit in. And there's the raw talent of the Hugh McGregor character, the Iggy Pop character, and the more manufactured, ironic version played, which is the Jonathan Rhys Meyer version, which is Brian Slade. And it's like a projection of imagery and a sense of nothing's quite satisfying to anybody. An idea of the fantasy world people use to express themselves can't retain that. Real life gets in the way and frustrates it, and you have to kind of try and reinvent, and it's never quite right, and it's just about the frustration of dreams of humanity and how we still need them to keep going. Otherwise, you're doomed to be repressive and live in a world that's not full of any life. It's just full of just bleh. So obviously a very articulate ending to that sentence. So that's Velvet Goldmine. That's the sense of I get from it. Is like there is a plot about trying to find this pop star who disappeared, and of course that's not really the ending to it is fairly obvious, and it's not even trying to hide it. You know, there's a sense of we don't try to hide what it is. What it is that's the theme of the thing of the depression, the sense of everything coming to an end, because there's a melancholy tied to glam rock, the sense of freedom of glam rock, and the melancholy of it is all part of it in the first place. It's all an expression of it. So not even try to hide the kind of disappointment and the ending. It's just like that's part of the emotional journey, because it's almost like an album about glam rock rather than the reality. Because this film goes from the 70s, of the freedom of the 70s, and the seediness of the 70s at the same time, or the business side of the 70s floating through the supposed freedom of that in the 60s, to the kind of corporatization of the 80s. And it's like, well, it was never actually that. In real life, it was never that clear cut. And even if the film knows it, and it's suggesting it throughout, but it's also a pop album version of that, which is simplification for emotion, but then what's the emotion floating through the dream of what you're trying to say. And the world basically becomes something that is an expression of characters getting older and what do you do with the sense of your dreams have died. So it's a film with a lot of ideas done in a kind of very pop fashion, glam rock way that alienated a lot of people. This was not a film that came out and did really well. This is a film that bombed and then was found later. One of the big criticisms of it was it was too gay. Really, it was just too gay. Was the criticism for the film, because even the glam rock in the 70s wasn't as gay. But it's taken the idea of this is from the point of view of this guy who is closeted. It was closeted gay in the 70s. He's now reporting the 80s, and he can't really bring up his private life at all. It's just all very closeted, and he's been told stories by these different people who their stories, their version of Brian Slade might be biased. It might not be the reality. So it's the reality, but not the reality. And it's a dream of what this guy actually was, because he never meets him. He always has a view of him as a pop star, and it's the pop star phenomena that he projected was of bisexuality. And this guy's idea, and the idea of what people are trying to put across to him as this very sexually open world, and the reality is it was probably more ambiguous than that, and probably less out there. But this is part of the memories of the people involved and of this reporter who's reporting on it. So it's meant to be biased, and it's also leading towards this idea of this whole film being like an expression of this era rather than the reality of it. So it's meant to be biased. It's to look at how your dreams are affected by your way you approach someone, way your problems and situations interpret them. So it's all about interpretation as well throughout. And the whole thing is you're getting Brian Slade interpreted by 3 or 4 different people, which includes a reporter and his memories of him, without never meeting him, as a fan version, as he's coming out in the 70s and learning the sexuality. That's played by Christian Bale. You've got the first thing, the manager, the original manager of him, who was ousted early on. He's telling the story of him, and his version of him is really gay, because this guy was gay and he was living within this world of these artists who are all in the closets in this kind of submerged gay world, and it was very much like you can't quite believe everything you're hearing there, but it's kind of expression of that world. And then you get to the other side of the story from his Bryce Lee's wife, so it shows her bisexuality rather than just gayness. And she's a much more nuanced take on him, because you see Bryce Lee fall in love with the Hugh McGregor character and it not working out. So there's a gay element there, which is based on Bowie and Iggy Pop and Lou Reed in Berlin and things like that. And there's drug abuse and there's depression at the height of fame, and all that stuff happens in this. But as a dream of that, there's also the emotional thing of watching this guy who is all ironic and all distance actually, through the point of view of his wife and what she remembers of it, you're seeing him actually being heartbroken. But is that the reality, or is that what she dreams of it because he broke her heart? You never tell, because you never see Brian Slade, you just see the image of him, the suggestion of him. You don't ever see him like straight on until the end. We see him, what he's become, which is basically this right-wing religious 80s iconography pop guy putting on these massive concerts that are very kind of pro-American, pro-Reaganite era. So he's changed his message in the 60s and 70s was cynical but ironic and naive, but with romanticism to it. In the 80s, it's moved from a romanticism about people to a kind of dark romanticism about a society, an idealized society that's actually very corrupt. And it kind of suggests that kind of corruption was always there. And the idea that he doesn't really care about the message as long as he's the message, he's the medium of whatever society needs. And it's just a shallowness to it, but also suggesting of the Glam Rock was one cover, and this other thing's another cover, and they're both unreal in different ways. It's just that one version knows it's unreal, and another version doesn't. But they're still affecting the fans in the same way, which the fans of the 70s glam rock into expression was into one thing, and then in the 80s they're still with the same passion for it, but it's now towards this pure idealized thing that's also unreal. And it's like, you are affecting the people who are fans of you, and what you do, it does have an impact. It's just that different types of impact, but it's done in a way that suggests in those ideas, but those ideas of this is how the world gets affected by different artists and different societies, and how the artist fits into the societies as they're evolving. And some people are ironic and parasitic, like Brian Slade character, or they can be raw, like the Hugh McGregor character, who never really fits in and is always lacking and feeling the need for something more substantial. So you got those two things, and the Brian Slade character always wants that reality, but he never can quite get it. And he ends off becoming cynical and a user of iconography, while always desiring that kind of reality. And it suggested the reason why the love story didn't work between them is because for a man who was obsessed by his own image, he couldn't get beyond the image of the Hugh McGregor character. The image he projected wasn't really the real him. It was the stories of him that wasn't really him. So it's always stories upon stories, and stories getting in the way, and stories creating things but also damaging things. So it's a situation of never quite knowing what the reality is. No one quite knows what the reality is. So there's a lot of ideas in this film, but it's also a very enjoyable film. It's very well made. It was made in a budget. The budget gets slashed. So they were trying to shoot in New York. They couldn't shoot in New York. So London has to cover for New York. And it doesn't do it very convincingly. So in some ways, the budget getting slashed meant that a lot of the set pieces were probably smaller than expected. But it does give this handmade quality to it that really works. But it means when they go to New York, when it should be New York, it doesn't look like New York. So it's that kind of thing of the budget slashing helps in some ways and hurts in other ways. But it's always an imperfect film. I don't think even if they did a budget, it would be a perfect film. It's a very imperfect film. That's the kind of emotion of it, and the enjoyment of it, the sense of pushing forward and knowing the weirdness of it all. So you have some fun supporting parts, but Eddie Izzard is a very Michael Caine-ish manager. You have Emily Wolfe as the kind of femme fatale who steals Brian Slater away from everybody at the end. You've got all these characters floating through. Michael Feast is the first manager. So Toni Collette is the ex-wife, and she's terrific because she plays various versions of the character. She's either the version from the manager who's way over the top. You have the version that you see when Christian Bale talks to her, that's much more normal, older person, and then her memories of herself, which is somewhere in the middle. And it's like, it's quite a smart performance because it's different for different people. And all the actors are doing that, but she does it better than anyone else. So Velvet Goldmine is definitely worth a review. It's really interesting. It's, if you can try and see the biggest screen possible, because it works better that way. A smaller screen doesn't have the same effect. It really needs a bigger screen just to see the different things they're trying to do. Of course, it makes it, you can see the flaws more obvious, but also the peaks of the different musical sequences and what they're trying to do with it, and how they're trying to make art out of like a music video aesthetic by telling you lots of bits of stories visually very quickly, but also saying this is all fake and this is all designed to fool you, while fooling you, and you're enjoying being fooled but also aware of the fakery. A lot of that stuff you don't get the same effect in the smaller screen. So this is really worth seeing. It's a really terrific little film, and hopefully I'll have inspired you to go watch it. So that's me for now. Bye.